Hi everyone, welcome back. Yes, the author of this study, just doing a recap from the sections we had looked at before, and the author of this study clearly shared that our nation's identity, not only our nation's identity, but our nation's context aligns with our national pledge. Our nation, Jamaica, would have made a covenant with their creator, God. And it's out of this covenant relationship that our forefathers would have designed the national pledge that we still pray and sing today. Hence, the author of this research is recommending, not suggesting, but recommending that Jamaica goes back or return to our vision. The author is also highlighting that based on the data gathered in the study, our nation has missed the vision of our educational system. Hence, the challenges, the gaps that were identified in this study. So, Jamaica's education should embrace not only devotion, but our education system should embrace prayer, devotion, prayer, and worshiping or the worship of our Creator as the foundational vision-based strategies that are directly aligned to its national pledge and national anthem. Jamaica's education ministry, yes, they came up with a vision, and that vision was identified as NCEL, the National College of Educational Leadership, that made some positive contributions to the community of practice in Jamaica, explicitly before, or more so before, the global COVID-19 crisis, during and beyond as our nation transitioned. However, based on the findings of this research, the author clearly stated or clearly shared that NCEL did not, and I'll say that again, NCEL did not provide sufficient support for educational leaders at the beginning of the pandemic. They did not provide sufficient support during the pandemic. And also the data revealed that NCEL, though it made good contributions that benefited the nation's educational system, however, there were many weaknesses in the NCEL program, especially as it relates to building a strong foundation in our nation's infant education, building a strong root program in education that would transform our nation. So this was identified as one of the weaknesses of NCEL. There were many others, but this was a key one. These participants shared that NCEL also revealed different, or not revealed, but NCEL demonstrated different forms of inequity and lack of inclusion. Otherwise, you may say discrimination in their program, according to the author of this study. Furthermore, it was evident that the Ministry of Education, according to this research, did not have a vision. It was stated that the Ministry of Education did not have a clear vision, a strategic plan, or a framework to navigate the COVID-19 crisis. There were issues before the COVID-19, during the COVID-19, and beyond. However, what came out strongly in this study is that the vision was not clearly put together. The vision lacked. It lacked research. It lacked careful research. You see, majority of participants shared this view according to the author. Scholars in the field agree that executive educational leaders are the chief accountable officers who must be responsible for providing support before a crisis, during a crisis, and beyond the crisis. Now, the COVID-19 crisis lacked this support. Though some support was given, it was clear that the limitations were great. And the COVID-19 crisis showed that up, the big gaps in our educational system. Also, we look at other crises. For example, Hurricane Melissa, another crisis that was one of the worst hurricanes that would have hit Jamaica. We're looking at how our nation, how prepared is our nation to deal with crises? How prepared? What about the support that the executive educational leaders they need in order to provide support to the lower level educational leaders? And as we mentioned early on in the report, we were saying that educational leaders cannot give what they do not have. The principals cannot give what they do not have. And this was clearly stated as the author gathered the data. Now, motivation was identified, lack of motivation. In the data, it revealed that intrinsic motivation was not enough. Many of our principals shared that they were intrinsically motivated, but the data revealed that when educational leaders at various levels are limited to intrinsic motivation only, it's like hopping on one leg. It's incomplete. It cannot work. It just cannot work. So the data reveal the need for support, encouragement, inspiration, and overall motivation for principals, specifically in a crisis. And this information is supported by experts in the field, De Jong and Hartog 2010, Scott 1994, West 1990, Hubfall 2011b, Young 2013, Boonstra 2013. These experts admittedly agreed that both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation are needed. So when our principals in Jamaica say that they're intrinsically motivated and there's nothing said about the extrinsic motivation, this is like hopping on one leg. It's very limited, according to the author of this study. So the absence of any of the factors, whether extrinsic motivation. So if the Ministry of Education, they are providing all the support, but the principals lack that passion, that purpose. If the principals lack their personal vision, if they've lost their passion and their purpose, yes, then you're going to have a problem. It's going to frustrate the Ministry of Education because they would be providing all the training, all the retraining. They'll be providing all the resources and the support. But we are still having problems, especially in our inner city schools, especially in our rural schools, especially at the infant level of education. We're still having these problems. And the question is, you cannot give what you do not have. And many of the participants, they cried out. They cried out that we cannot do it. We cannot motivate our teachers when we lack motivation. So this is the report coming from the principals. They cannot motivate teachers when they themselves lack motivation. They lack support. They cannot give computers if they don't get it. If they are not trained in technology, they cannot provide it. And they did admit that NCEL provided some training. They did admit that the Ministry of Education, through its agency NCEL, provides some training. However, it was limited, way limited. There were some participants, according to the author of this study, who shared that they applied to be a part of NCEL. However, on more than one occasions, they were rejected. And this is at the infant level of education. There were other participants who knew about NCEL and some did not know. So we recognize a lack of inclusion. We recognize inequity and discrimination in the NCEL program, despite the effort, the many effort of the Ministry of Education to provide NCEL, its agency, to give them the support to build the capacity of our nation's principals. The COVID-19 crisis, the findings revealed that this vision was limited and that it lacked proper research. Therefore, the author recommends the implementation of visionary leadership. So what is the solution for this problem that was identified? The solution, according to the author of this research, is that the nation should not solely look at transformation, which is hopping on one leg. You cannot transform if you do not have a vision. Transformation does not come before visionary leadership. You must first have a vision. You must have an idea. You must have a plan. You must have a vision before you're able to transform. So the question is, if we do not have a clear vision, then it's evident that the transformation process that is being used by our nation would not be successful. So this study is calling on all executive leaders to go back and revisit the vision. Have a look at the vision and look at how this vision, how it is able, or is it able to provide real transformation? Was the vision researched carefully? Is there alignment with the vision? If the vision of the nation's educational system does not align with the context of our nation, if it does not align with the identity of our nation, then we are going to have serious problems. The author of this study continued to share that this lack of alignment with the identity of the nation and the context of the nation to the vision that was brought forward, it has revealed that this is the problem, because our nation would have been depending on best practices. Yes, evidence-based research is good. However, The research must be aligned to the context of the nation of Jamaica. It must be aligned to who we are as a people, what makes Jamaica unique. Yes. So this research, it was revealed, it revealed these gaps that the author sought to fill. Now, the recommendation is to put forward a vision-based transformation, or to put forward vision-based transformational strategies. So this is one of the recommendations by the author, that we must implement vision-based transformational strategies. We should not say, oh, transformation includes visionary leadership. No, visionary leadership is a unique leadership style. It stands on its own. Yes, there is some link to transformation, but it does not mean that visionary leadership is not a style of leadership. So the emphasis has been placed on transformation. Everybody in our nation is transforming. Everywhere you go, every time you listen on TV and on radio, we're all hearing about transformation. But what this author is echoing is that without a vision, the people perish. One of the first style of leadership was visionary leadership, and is visionary leadership. So if we take away the vision, then what are we going to transform? And this is what the author is bringing forward. We cannot mix both and focus on transformation, but nobody's speaking clearly about visionary leadership and how powerful this leadership style is then and today, and also as we move forward beyond Hurricane Melissa, beyond the COVID-19 crisis. As we move forward, as we approach our Vision 2030, we need visionary leadership. We need to emphasize, we need to know the vision, and we must be able to communicate the vision clearly to our nation. If you cannot communicate the vision clearly, that the inner city schools, if you ask a child what is their vision, they can tell you. So we're looking at vision at all levels. Our students must have a vision. Our teacher must have a vision. Teachers must have a vision. Our principals must have a vision. Our executive leaders must have a vision. The prime minister must have a vision. And all of these visions must be linked. It must be linked. There must be one vision that governs the nation. Yes. And there must be alignment to the identity of the nation. Not just alignment to the identity of the nation, but you must understand the uniqueness, what makes Jamaica different. You have 3 children, but they all don't wear the same size. The 3 children may wear different sizes. So you cannot take best practices and just write it up and say we're going to bring this to our nation. No, we can learn a lot from first world countries. There's so much to learn. However, proper research must be done, and these strategies must be tailored, bearing in mind Jamaica's unique identity, bearing in mind what our forefathers they did, what we celebrate our national heroes. What are we celebrating? What contributions did our national heroes what did they bring to our educational system? And how would we support these contributions? What do we believe as a nation? What is our vision? When we lose sight of our own belief system, our own identity, when we go and take on the identity of other nations without tailoring these strategies, then we are going to end up in serious problems. So, the author of this study is recommending vision-based transformational strategies supported by Lee 2018, Boonstra 2013. Also, the author is recommending timely strategic planning. Timely strategic planning that is effective, which includes communication and effective consultation of the vision. Also, the author is suggesting or recommending that our nation pay keen attention. Our nation leaders must pay keen attention to humble leadership. The question is, how humble are our leaders? We cannot give what we don't have. Our leaders must demonstrate humility at all levels. Now, when we fail to demonstrate humility, we cannot expect to have a humble nation when the leadership are not demonstrating this leadership style of humble leadership. The author is also recommending that we not brush over spiritual leadership, but that we understand that spiritual leadership aligns with the identity of our nation. It aligns with our core values of who we are. Spiritual leadership, these spiritual values that our nation embrace, they were, I would say, carefully preserved by our forefathers. So if you're going to come up with a vision, but ignore the context of our nation, ignore the identity of our nation, ignore what makes Jamaica unique to all other countries, yes, the author stated that the nation, yes, there are many challenges. It's not perfect, but they are strategies, they are contributions, they are values that are rich and deep, that is embedded in our culture, spiritual values that is different from other nations, and we should not forget who we are. Specifically during a crisis. During a crisis, in order for you to reach the people, you must be willing to be a humble leader. A humble leader is a visionary leader. A humble leader with a vision and the ability to be flexible, is the ability to be transparent, the ability to be authentic. Yes. Yes. A humble leader. So humble leadership and spiritual leadership, visionary leadership, these are three of the key styles that were pulled out of the many different leadership styles. There's so many other, but the author of this study focused that the transformation of our nation as we move forward is embedded in humble leadership. The participants are crying out for more humble leaders. The participants are crying out for spiritual leadership, especially in a crisis. Many of the participants shared that during the COVID-19 crisis, it was their prayers to God that helped them. Many of them shared that when they did not see or hear from the Ministry of Education, they cried out to God. Many of them shared that when they did not know what to do, they cried out to God. Many of them shared that when they did not have the resources during the global crisis, and maybe as we explore more of this hurricane, Melissa, just to hear how are our principals leading? How are we moving forward as a nation when the infrastructure of many of our schools are totally wiped out? How are we going forward? Who are we depending on for support? Hence, this study is recommending a collaboration, a coming together, a networking of all Jamaicans from the private sector and the public sector. This study is recommending that together we are better as a nation. A collaboration with the parents coming on board. One participant shared that going to PTA meeting, it's much more than paying dues. Many of the parents don't come out because they do not want to be asked for dues because their children are not reading. Their children do not have the computer to learn. Their children are suffering. And if their children are suffering, why should they come to the PTA meetings? So many of them were concerned. They saw and agreed that the Ministry of Education, they have been trying. To be hit with a global crisis is nothing easy. But the author of this research clearly stated that one principle shared during the COVID-19 crisis, if the Ministry of Education wrote thank you on a piece of paper, that participant would have been happy. And I can give you the name for that participant. That is participant P6. Yes, for many reasons we do not use real names because we need to protect our participants. So participant P6 clearly stated that they waited for the ministry to come, but they did not show up. However, participant P11 and P12 spoke highly about the Ministry of Education. Participant P4, according to the author of this research, stated clearly that P3 and P4, P5, these participants stated that they lack support. However, it is P4, yes, P4 had a vision. P4 did not wait on the Ministry of Education to come. P4 was proactive, did research, and decided that they wanted to start computer sessions. Also, P4 decided that this participant wanted cameras in all the classrooms. This participant made sure that the support was received because the decision was made that they're going to implement cameras in their school. And though this participant P4 experienced great obstacles and the teachers did not buy into the vision. The teachers did not buy into the placement of cameras in the classroom. They did not want to be watched. They don't want to feel like they're not trusted. But this participant shared that when a child blamed a teacher for stealing something that the teacher did not steal, that same teacher say, Miss, go check the camera. Now, when the principal went and checked the camera, the teacher was so happy because it was the accusation was cleared up, and they recognized that the teacher did not steal what she was accused of or he was accused of. But from that day, the principal got the buy-in of that vision from all teachers. So we are saying that the collection of this data, there were participants in our nation's education system that showed visionary leadership. There were participants that showed humble leadership. And there were participants that showed spiritual leadership. However, majority of the participants lack these styles of leadership. Now, we have experts in the field, specifically during and beyond the COVID-19 crisis. These experts support spiritual leadership. And these experts are Rogers 2003, Thompson 2005. Hence, the author of this study is recommending that the Ministry of Education pay keen attention to the implications of inequity, especially at the early childhood level, especially at the infant level of education as it relates to its program NCEL. The author of this study is recommending that there be no discrimination at all levels of Jamaica's educational system, and that this discrimination was identified at different levels, but more so at the infant level of education. Now, the recommendation has been put forward, the need to formulate new policies that align with the transition of our nation's educational system from traditional to digitized learning in the TLP, which is a teaching and learning process. So the author of this study suggests that keen attention be given to the building of the capacity of all educational leaders at all levels. The executive level cannot give what they don't have. The lower level of educational leaders cannot give what they don't have. But specifically, the infant level, at the infant level of our schools, where the need seems greatest as we go through different crises, especially the COVID-19 crisis. Now we look at Melissa, another crisis, not global, but directly hitting Jamaica. We want to also look at how ready are we as a nation for these crises. How ready is our educational system? Do we have a backup plan? Do we have plan A, plan B, plan C, maybe plan D? Also, establishing attractive, the author recommended here are more recommendations by the author. The author recommended the need to establish attractive remuneration. Not only establishing attractive remuneration, but focusing the attention on providing staff packages for all educational leaders, but especially those leading during a crisis, not only looking at COVID, as I said before. The complaints, the cry of our educational leaders were before COVID, during COVID and beyond. Now we're looking at another crisis, Melissa, and we want to find out, where are we as a nation? Where are we educationally? What are the strategies? What are our plans? Are we a crisis-ready nation? And if not, why not? Again, the author is crying out that keen attention must be paid to the infant level. A nation's educational system is as strong as the foundation in education. And full inclusion of males in our teaching and learning process is a must. Making available attractive benefits, especially for our principals at the infant level, especially for our teachers. Getting parents to take ownership, to be a part of the teaching and learning process. How can parents do their role at home? How can parents be a part of it? So when we have a crisis and the children have to stay home, parents who are prepared will be able to provide training, homeschooling for their children until our education system is ready. So we need to look at even training parents who are trainable